Radhe Radhe. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Hope you are gearing up for a Monday morning and had a good weekend. So let's get started with today's session by invoking the blessings of God and Guru, like we always do. So let me share my screen. Just give me a sec, finding my presentation. It's not right. Are you able to see my screen? Not in screen. Now it's okay, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's get started with our opening prayers then. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurudevo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Hamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Hey, we have Radhe Radhe. Good morning, good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's edition of Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. So let's get started. We were talking about the concept of a devotee in our last session. And today I'll pick up the qualification that Lord Krishna is referring to in this shloka. Two qualifications, one of being a devotee and one of being a friend. Right? That is why Arjun has been chosen to impart this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So this is what we're going to talk about. So do we need to be a friend of Krishna to be able to communicate with him or to build a relationship or a rapport with him? Or there are some other possibilities as well, is what we are going to talk about today. So I'm going to recite this shloka, and like always, you're welcome to follow along. Sa evayam maya tedya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hetaduttamam. All right, let's take a few hands.
Radhe Radhe Shyamji.
Radhe Radhe Shyamji.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe
Maya tedya yogaha proktaha puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hetad uttamam. Radhe Radhe.
Very nice. Thank you. Radhe Radhe Shyamji. Okay, let's take a couple of more hands.
Arunji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Sa evayam maya tedya yogaha proktaha puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hetuduttamam. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you. Radhe Radhe, Tarunji. Very nice.
Prabhatji, Radhe Radhe. Please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Sa evam maya tedya yoga prokta puratana bhaktos si me soka cheti rahasyam etad uttamam.
Very nice. Thank you, Prabhat. I see a couple of more hands.
Yeah, Samji, Radhe Radhe. Please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Sa evam maya tedya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hetuduttamam. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Radhe Radhe Shyamji. We have 3 more hands, so let's take those and then we get started.
Yes, Riyaji, Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Riyaji.
स एवायं मया तेद्य योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति रहस्यं ह्येतदुत्तमम्। Thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Radhe Radhe.
Srishti ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Srishti ji.
राधे राधे स
Radhe Radhe.
एवायं मया तेत्या योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति रहस्यं ह्येतद् उत्तमम्। राधे राधे।
Radhe Radhe,
Thank
very
you.
nice. Thank you, Srishti ji. All right, last but not the least, Sandhya, go ahead.
स एवायं मया तेद्य योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति रहस्यं ह्येतदुत्तमम्.
Very nice. Thank you, Sandhya. And let's get started. So this shloka, Lord Krishna is saying, in the previous one, he had told that this was knowledge was imparted. It is not the first time he's imparting it, right? He had imparted it to the sun god, Vivaswan. And then he's saying this same ancient knowledge of yoga, which is a supreme secret. Again, it's not a knowledge which is readily accessible. Not because of the fact that we don't have enough translations of Bhagavad Gita available, but for the fact that only when he graces does the knowledge resonate or sticks in our head. And that is how he maintains it as a secret. And then he goes on to say, I'm today revealing unto you because, and he's qualifying Arjun, because you are my friend as well as my devotee, who can understand this transcendental wisdom. Okay. So let's get started. Now, quick recap. Arjun is saying, why are you selecting me? That too in this battlefield, right? It's a very valid question from Arjun's standpoint. And then he's saying, you're giving me a philosophical doctrine and the science of God to me, even though I'm not a Vedantist, not even Brahman, situated in Brahman, and I'm not even a sannyasi, I'm a householder. Why are you speaking this to me? And Lord Krishna is saying, Bhaktosi. He's giving him the qualification. Only qualification that you need to have is having devotion, being a bhakta on this, basically for you to be eligible to get this knowledge. Moving on. Now, without a devotional heart, what cannot truly grasp the message of Bhagavad Gita? You need a devotional heart. That is a prerequisite. If you don't have nishtha, faith, your mind is doing kintu parantu and not having that nishtha that these words actually came from God himself, then this message will not click. If you think, these are just an ordinary words, just like any other book, then this knowledge will not truly give you the benefit that it's meant to give you, because God's Chitta Shakti is present in this knowledge, and it's only God who can become that, from a what you call that theoretical knowledge to a realized knowledge. He only can make certain concepts click in our head, and the import of this knowledge is directly proportional to the level of our bhakti bhav, nishtha, or surrender. Okay, the bigger the bucket is, the cleaner the bucket is, the more the import of the same message would be. So the same shloka, if you revisit after a few years of being on this path, the message will start becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. You'll say, oh my God, there's something new I'm learning out of it. It's like dipping into a sea and bringing out pearls, newer and newer pearls, right? More precious pearls. That is how powerful this knowledge is. And this verse also invalidates the commentaries on Bhagavad Gita written by scholars, Gyanis, Yogis, Tapasvis, etc. Because if they don't have a devotion element in it, then, it's just a, what do you call that, intellectual gymnastics at that point. Anybody's trying to do with this commentary. Yeah. And the qualification, as said, basically is of that being of a devotee, and a devotional heart is what is needed on this to understand the import of Bhagavad Gita. So, Srimad Bhagavatam states, it's a beautiful verse I got from Srimad Bhagavatam. He says that, Aham Bhakta Paradhino. Now, although God is supremely independent, right? He's not dependent on anybody. But in Bhagavatam, he states that Aham bhaktam paradhino. I'm actually enslaved by, completely under the control of my devotee. I'm not at all independent, because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires. But devotees, they're completely devoid of material desires, which is a pretty big aspiration, right? I sit only within the cores of their heart. What to speak of my devotee? Even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear to me. That's what Lord Krishna is saying in Bhagavatam. Okay, so it's a beautiful verse. So God has many definitions, right? God is known as Deen Bandhu. God is known as Patit Pavan. God is known as Bhaktavatsal. And here is another definition that is getting added, which is Bhaktavashya. He's actually under the control of his devotee, true devotee. And one of the reasons, qualifications that is called out very clearly is devoid of material desires. Even if you have a trace of material desire, that means you have not yet become a devotee. The devotee that Lord Krishna is talking about here. Okay. So we all like to believe we are devotees, but we are work in progress devotees. A true devotee has not even a single trace of material desire, is how this has to be understood, this particular verse. And then he says that what to speak of my devotee, even those who are devotees of my devotees are very dear to me. So, that is also a pretty interesting concept in that sense. So moving on. So we need to decorate and enhance our bhav. There's an importance of bhav, right? In this case, Lord Krishna is calling out Arjun that you are my friend. That means he exercises a friendly sentiment towards Krishna, right? When he calls him Madhav, Keshav, he exercises that sentiment. So when Krishna shows him his cosmic form, he said, Krishna, please forgive me if I have said something inappropriate to you, considering you just an ordinary mortal or my friend. Okay, that is a sentiment Arjuna has, because he always used to consider him as his friend. And that is one of the bhavs that we have. But bhav is the richness of sentiment towards God, right? What is bhav? If we look at it, and devotion is the quality of the bhav that we possess. Okay, these are definitions of bhav. And this is the secret sauce to enable leap towards God realization. Okay, the bhav is something, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? Protection of bhav is the key, and keep on decorating, enriching your bhav and protect the bhav. That is the key to devotion. Okay. Now let's move on. Taking this further on. So we spoke that when we do bhakti, the bliss, joy, peace, knowledge, all that stuff increases automatically. That should be one of the consequences. If it is not happening, something is not correct. Something is not correct. Some variable is not correct, because all these things have to increase over time. Okay. If it's not happening, that means the dose needs to be doubled, or really need to look at where our mind space is going. And if double dose is not working, triple the dose. But that's the only way. Okay, this is how it works. And when you do bhakti, the other part of his ignorance aspect it should diminish, because God is seated within. The more your heart is pure, the more knowledge will get revealed. And when the knowledge gets revealed, it's like the ignorance has to make way for it. Like when the light starts coming in, the darkness has to give way automatically. And this starts happening. And the third thing we spoke about, the anger, lust, and greed. Of course, it's not going to increase. It is going to decrease as well. So the amount of proportionate, it's directly proportional to the mind, to the fact that how much your mind is attached to God. And then proportionately, these generals of Maya, which is the pack is led by anger, they should diminish over time. Proportionately, the feelings of anger, lust, greed, and envy, that should start diminishing or reducing. Now, if one should not get disheartened, what, I'm been on this path and all of a sudden, why did this thought come, or why did it make me angry, or this? It will happen. Even if you are 99.9% there, it will happen. Right? Only when the intensity, the FIR, the frequency, the intensity, and the recurrence would decrease. But sometimes people become very despondent and very sad that, why I've been doing this and still it is happening. It is fine. As the progress is going to happen over time. You can compare your previous version with your current version to see that, there has been progress. But if we imagine that, we have started doing bhakti and we will wake up as a saint one day, it's not going to just like happen just like that, right? It's not a binary 0-1 kind of a transition. It's a journey, and a pretty long journey. It can be, it really depends on the pace at which you pick up. So that journey can unfold in different ways. But all these generals of Maya, they start becoming less and less potent as you increase your devotion and as you increase the purity of your heart, right? That is how it's meant to work. And we spoke about bhakti being a Swiss Army knife. It can do multiple things. So if you simply keep on enhancing your devotion towards God, like I saw people in Banke Bihari temple, they were like, they will do anything just to get a darshan. So it was kind of a divine, what you call that, chaos that they had created, but for a good reason, right? Not to see a film star. But when you keep on purifying your heart with, of course, proper knowledge, then all of these things have to fall in place. Okay, there's no other way. Okay, all of these things have to happen. The meditative practices that we do, when we start bringing God into the mix, into that, then it has to purify your antakaran. Okay, that is what the Tattva Gyan philosophy says. In order to purify your heart, which is colored with the Maya, and all the shades of Maya, you need to attach it to something all pure. And only when you bring God into the mix, or your God realized saint into the mix, then only it will purify it. Otherwise, anything else will keep on coloring it further. Let's move on. Yes, so talking about bhavs now. Okay, so let's start with the bhavs. Sakhya bhav is something that Arjun is practicing with Lord Krishna. So what do our scriptures talk about the bhavs? It starts with if you look at the bhav, it starts with Shant bhav, where we'll talk about it in more detail. So this is a bhav, which is a beginning of the, bhavs that you can inculcate towards God. As you see, the more closer bhav is, the next bhav is called Dasya bhav, where you get certain more privileges with God, and you can practice that as part of your meditative practice that you are doing. The third one is called Sakha bhav, which is what Arjun is practicing. Right? Lord Krishna has called him, you are my friend. He's not saying you are my eternal you are my servant or anything else, right? Or you are my das. He's not referring servant. I mean, don't refer it to it that way. Das, basically, you have been serving me, kind of a deal. He's saying you're my friend, which is kind of a discussion between the equals, right? We know how we are with our friends. And then the more proximity that we have with the Vatsalya bhav, which gets a little more proximate, closer to God, where you can exercise a little more freedom with God, as we will see. And the closest one is the Madhurya bhav, which is in form of seeing God as your beloved. That is the closest bhav a Jivatma can exercise with God. Okay. Now moving on, let's understand these bhavs in a little more detail. To begin with, you see, if we worship, so Arjun, basically, he's a fit student. God is calling him out as a fit student because he was a devotee of the Lord. And devotion to God can be practiced in any of the 5 sequentially higher bhavs. They are called sequentially higher bhavs. First one is a Shant bhav, or adoring God as your king. So you look at it, the Narayan form. So let's say you adore God as your king, and that is a bhav which comes very naturally to us, right? And in our devotion, even when we were, we are introduced to this path, or we would worship God, we think of him as a king, right? Somebody, subject-object kind of a relationship. And in this bhav, basically, you consider him as somebody, very far off, not far off, but it's like our king. So if Ram Bhagwan is in Ayodhya and you are his praja, you are considering God as your king, would you have access to his palace? You would be looking and revering him from a distance, that he's our king. And Ayodhyavasi, they celebrated Diwali, lighting lamps like we do now when he came back. But they were happy with the fact that our king has come back to our kingdom. It's a very distant relationship, but a relationship, right? You are adoring, revering your king, and you have a connect with him. It's like my king is my lord. He's going to be my protector. So this bhav, people who perfect it, this is called the Shant bhav. In fact, it is said that in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, it is devotion in Shant bhav. So if some of you are attending Patanjali Yoga Sutra, it is basically devotion in Shant bhav, where you look at king from a distance and it is the bhav that is exercised, but has a certain proximity. You don't have access to your king just like that. And when you go to your king, these are protocols that need to be followed in your head, right? You are thinking, I'm going to my king, and he's so high and I'm so low, and all those kind of things would come in your mind. So this is called the Shanta Bhav, the very first bhav. What is the next bhav? The next bhav is called Dasya Bhav. Now, Dasya Bhav, the parikashta of Dasya Bhav, if you look at some of the role models on this path, somebody, whom you would look up to when you are practicing your devotion in Dasya Bhav is Hanumanji or Lakshmanji. Right? Hanumanji, we know how he revered Lord Ram, and he would go to any extent for his Aradhya. Same thing with Lakshmanji. He did not sleep for 14 years. But Dasya Bhav, of course, you have to follow certain protocols. He would not even step at the place where Lord Ram or Mother Sita would step, and he took care of them completely for 14 years. He did not sleep. And Hanumanji, we know he's parikashta of Dasya Bhav. He lifted an entire mountain for his Lord when he had to save his brother, right? And what he did when he went to Mother Sita. And Dasya Bhav, of course, now the proximity, if you look at it from a Shant Bhav, it has decreased. A Das has a certain more privileges. What kind of privileges? Das can enjoy more closer proximity. Now you're not only looking up to him as your king, but now you have access to his palace. You can go and touch his feet. You can press his feet. You've gotten certain privileges, right? But there is still certain protocols in that sense, basically, where you consider him as your master and yourself as a servant, where your primary prerogative is to serve God. That is how you look at God. But it is a little closer proximity to God than the Shant Bhav, where you're looking at him as a king and distance is much more. You can only look at him from a distance, but you don't have access to his personal space, to his palace, or even to touch his feet or to do his charan sevan or things like that. Okay. So now the proximity has increased basically in that sense. Tanmay ji will come back. We'll take all the questions together. So proximity has decreased now. Next one is called Sakha Bhav. So this is the Bhav where you consider God as your friend. So there are enough examples of it in our scriptures. Bhagavatam, if you go in Sakha Bhav, Bhagavatam stories are there, and Arjun also worshipped God as his friend. And so Lord Krishna speaks to him as his friend and his devotee. So if you look at his Sakhas, even Govardhan Leela, all the Sakhas, they would consider Krishna as his friend. They did not consider him as God. By the way, when he would go out and to graze cows, the Sakhas will say, first of all, we are not your father's servant here. Okay, you go and lie in your black blanket, and we have to take care of grazing the cows, and you are resting here. So that is a sentiment they used to have about Krishna. Get up and do this kind of a deal. And Krishna would become Ghoda with them as well. We are okay. I will become your Ghoda. You go and kick me as well. And even when this Govardhan Leela happened, this rain, Indradev had, inundated that village, and Lord Krishna lifted Govardhan. The friends were actually thinking that, this whole big problem has come upon us. And this guy is so lazy, he's just touching his finger here. It's our prerogative to save it. And they were putting their twigs and sticks to hold that. And they actually believed it was their effort that was holding that entire mountain. Okay, and while Krishna was just touching his finger. It was only after the Leela, when Indra himself came and all, then they were in awe of him. Oh my God, he's not our friend. And then with this Yogamaya power, Krishna would make them forget. See, he likes proximity, not that awe and reverence part of it. So with this Yogamaya, he would make forget. Right? Even his mother, when he showed his mouth, right, the whole cosmos, he would make her forget as well. And he used to do that with his friends as well. But that was Sakha Bhav. And then we know the story of a Sudama as well, right? All the Makhan Leelas that Krishna would do, they are all basically examples of Sakha Bhav, where you consider God as your friend. Now it's a little more parity is restored, right? Now a friend has a lot more freedom than a Das, for that matter. You know, when even if your friend is an IAS officer, or let's say he's become a president, you will say, hey, come here. In college, like you used to be, you'll put your arm around him and have joke around with him. So that kind of liberty has increased now. A friend has more privileges than a servant or somebody, or das basically, or somebody who considers it as a inshant bhav, as a king subject object kind of a relationship. So now you have more privileges. If you are brave enough to practice this bhav, then you can take liberties from, you are my friend, you got to help me out and check me out. Not, I mean, all those kind of things that we do with our friends, but that sentiment has to be deepened. So that becomes Sakha Bhav. Closer than that is called Vatsalya Bhav, as your child. So Mother Yashoda, she would feed Krishna butter. She would even take the liberty of tying him, like we have the Ukhal Leela, even beat him up with a stick, and he would be scared at that time. So now the devotion, the what do you call that, the liberties you can take go a little more. Now friend cannot do all that, right? You'll say, okay, you are not my mother. You say that to your friends, and friends come and tell you something, or you should do this, and you say, you are not my parents. So you don't have that. The parents have that liberty with the kid. They can tie them up, they can slap them, scare them, right? What all we can do with our kids. So the liberty has increased now. And that is why when Brahmaji comes and looks at Purna Purushottam Brahman, he has taken on an avatar, he said, and he sees him running after his mother and crying and wailing so that he can get onto her lap. He said, what kind of karmas Mother Yashoda would have done, where God is chasing her. Typically, the sages and saints chase God, and God is nowhere to be seen. But in this case, it's reverse. He is chasing Yashoda Maiya. And so many leelas he has done where he's demanding attention. He said, how can you leave me when you are feeding me milk to take care of the milk which is boiling there? And he throws tantrums also with his mother. Okay, and troubles him and do all those kind of things. And mother also has more rights over him. She can tie him up, she can scare him, she can feed him. All those liberties are there, which a friend cannot have. But that means the proximity has increased a little further. In fact, it is said that the Jivatmas which practice their devotion in each one of these bhavs, when they are on the tipping point of it, they get a chance to participate in God's Leelas when he takes avatar, so that they can perfect their devotion and then finally go to his abode. Okay. So the souls that come, like typically the ones which are taking on a post of, let's say, Nand Baba, Yashoda Maiya, Kaikai, Kaushalya Maiya, or, they are either Jivatmas or they could be realized souls. Could be anybody, only God knows, right? Jivatmas who are on the tipping point of perfecting their devotion. So it's a dry run for them, right? Pre-production, they call it in IT. And then, or they could be realized souls who are parikars, eternal parikars of God, who are descending along with God to participate in his eternal pastimes. That possibility is there as well. But you see the distance is shrinking now. And moving on, the highest and the closest bhav is that of Madhurya Bhav, beloved. So if you actually compare it in material world as well, you can directly relate it to it. Now, when you have somebody as your beloved, you have much more liberties, right? You can treat them with much more freedom than any of the previous bhavs. And the interesting part of this bhav is that you can descend down to any of those bhavs when you want. Because when you exercise your devotion to Lord Krishna as a beloved, then stepping down to become his mother or father or friend or king or even his das is very easy. You can step down. So from top to down, that bhav, you can easily flow down. So it is the topmost bhav and the most proximity. You have much more freedom and rights in practicing this bhav than any of the other bhavs. So if you are brave enough to do that, this is the closest proximity to God. It says like gopis are the parikashta or the epitome of Madhurya Bhav. But yeah, of course, you have to enhance that bhav because it may not come naturally. It takes a bit of a bravery as well here as well, right? But this is the topmost bhav. And of course, it's easy for girls, right? Not so much for guys, you would imagine. Now, that might be a question out of my syllabus, if you ask me. You figure it out. My job was to tell you the theory. Practical aspect, you only have to figure out, okay? Or work with your guru on that, on how to decorate this bhav and stuff like that, because I'm not eligible to talk or answer those questions around it. But this is the topmost bhav, okay? And the other bhavs, so all these bhavs are very rich bhavs, right? Where we are not talking about selfishness, and God is basically, you're building a relationship with God here, right? Who's the very basis of our existence and this entire creation. So these bhavs can be nurtured in your meditative state. And then as you keep progressing in your bhavs, God will give you an opportunity through guru or otherwise to take those bhav and fructify those bhavs down the line. So the key here is, if you look at it, the bhav and the proximity, intimacy aspect of it, with each bhav, if you look at it, it's a lead, right? It's just increasing. And the most proximity you have in Madhurya Bhav, followed by Vatsalya, Sakha, Dasya, and Shant Bhav. Okay. And certain things and the Brajras, they talk about it, where you enjoy the close association of Krishna. It starts from Dasya Bhav onwards, not in Shant Bhav, because Shant Bhav, it's a very distant relationship. The relationship where you can actually start enjoying the proximity of God starts from Dasya Bhav, all the way up to Madhurya Bhav, in the increasing order of intimacy that you can exercise with God and practice with God, right? You can consider him as your friend, and then you start exercising, like you do with those are the bhavs that need to be enhanced. And that is called basically deepening your devotion towards God. And God likes that part. He said the Aishwarya Shakti aspect of, if you continue to consider God, oh my God, God is so big, he's so distant, all that will not help you become close to God. He said, if you leave aside the Aishwarya Chintan of me and build personal relationship, it will be easy for you. And the fact that he takes on an avatar is to reveal his nature, where he gives you a basis. Now you will say, how will I consider myself as a mother of Krishna? Right? Okay, look at the Leelas, how she would treat Krishna. You could practice that bhav. How can I consider him as a friend? Look at his Leelas in his avatar call, and you can practice that as well. All those things are given to us as part of his Leela, so that we can deepen, enhance, and decorate our bhavs. All right. So with that, I'll take a quick pause. Any questions on what we have discussed? Hope it gives you a bit of a perspective on how we can build a personal relationship with God, which is very important on the path of devotion. Not consider him as a stick-wielding entity sitting somewhere on the top, right? Who's going to punish us for something, where our devotion is not motivated by fear, but motivated with love and building a personal connect. Okay, so that is how it goes, and that is the whole idea about bringing in all the bhavs, not just limited to the friend, which Lord Krishna is talking about here for Arjun. Yes, Tarunji.
Radhe Radhe Tarunji.
Radhe Radhe Naveen. Yeah, so I wanted to know that I think the kind of the knowledge or the devotion we have with God as of now, it looks to me we can't go above Dasya Bhav. And there my question is, once I build some bhav like Dasya Bhav, I think it is going to remain that for me. How अगर मैंने अपने आप को मतलब भगवान का दास मान लिया, तो आई विल कंटिन्यू टू कीप माई सेल्फ एज दास फॉर आई थिंक फॉर दैट पीरियड आई मतलब या सो हाउ मतलब एक तो ऊपर ज्यादा ऊपर हम जा नहीं सकते अभी, और अगर मैंने नीचे कोई भाव बना लिया तो आई थिंक फिर उसको चेंज करना मुश्किल होगा. So that's my
Understood.
Question is
Understood. Understood. So yes, that is why it said, see, this bhav that you're talking about is the most natural to most people, right, to begin with. And that's perfectly okay as well, right? However, when you have other bhavs available, see, it's all again dictated by your sanskars and what comes naturally to you. And initially, we don't even know which bhav will settle for. So you experiment around with it until you settle for a particular one, which comes more naturally to you than others. So it's perfectly okay to do that. However, if it goes, as per the logical progression, it says when you progress on this theoretically, I can tell you only theoretically here, Dasya Bhav, then even in Dasya Bhav, the parikashtha of it is, if you come across a saint, you will realize that the best service you can render to God is through Madhurya Bhav. And then when you keep progressing in Madhurya Bhav, in progression, it says the best way to render service in Madhurya Bhav is Sahachari Bhav. Okay, so these are deeper concepts, but it should organically evolve. So you focus on what works out best for you and be comfortable with that, right? And let God and Guru take care of other things. We need to focus on our devotion without complicating our thought process. Let God and Guru decide, what is best. But at least at the back of your mind, if you have this theory, you never know which concept might pick up. And one thing could lead to another, to another, to another. So you settle down with that. But if you'll keep thinking, oh my God, this bhav is happening, that is not happening, you let it flow naturally and see where it takes you. Because God and Guru are anyway there, right? So that is how I'll take it, not overcomplicate my thought process around it. Yeah. Yes, Prabhat.
Yes, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Prabhat.
Radhe. So my question is like, is it possible that we can straight away go to Madhurya Bhav? Like we can feel that we are having Ras Leela kind of thing with Krishna, and sometimes when we are having our food, that time we can also feel that we are also feeding him, like in Vatsalya Bhav. And when I am thinking that I have to play, then I can ask him to come and we can play along. Together. So this is something that we can do. So from the beginning itself, we can go to Madhurya Bhav, or it's like we have to step down from sun. So this is something which I am asking. Like,
Yeah, for my understanding, it's not a sequential process. It's not like, hey, by the way, have you done the Dasya Bhav? No, then you go and do. You can directly go to, maybe you have past sanskars around it, right? So it's not like it's a sequential process. Whatever comes naturally to you, you go with that kind of a deal. So you do your best and leave God and Guru the rest. That's how it is. See, this discussion is important in the sense that the way we perceive God is very different, right? In general, that God is, somebody big. And so here God is giving us a basis to develop a personal connect with him. And that is why this discussion is very important. Now you can build a personal connect with God. He's given you that freedom and a choice. And that is where it simplifies the process of our devotion, as opposed to considering God as an entity, where we think, okay, somebody's sitting in seventh heavens and watching us and stuff like that. And he's so grand and we are so insignificant. That is true. That fact is there as well. However, he's still given us a basis. So yes, to your question, Prabhat, directly that bhav, if that comes naturally to you, go ahead and practice it and work with your guru to see, how you can decorate, enhance that bhav. Because it's important to progress correctly in any of those bhavs and keep on progressing on the path of. Now you have a basis, right? You can, like Gopis used to say, what do we do with the Brahman, a Nirakar light whom we can't even interact with? Now you have a basis to interact with. Are you interacting with God? No, you're not interacting with God. It's a simulation you're running. And as you keep on progressing in your bhakti, sadhan bhakti, and then bhav bhakti, then this progression and the milestones will automatically happen. Yeah, but it's not sequential. Yeah.
There's a question from Sri Ramya ji. Can bhavs change over a period of time?
They could, but finally you'll settle for some kind of, it can change. Depending upon the station of life you are in, it could change. Very natural, very, very possible. But finally, it's your call, your devotion, your relationship that you have to define, right? God has given you a framework, you define it. And then work with your guru if you have certain things to share, to understand, to see, where you are progressing in your bhavs and what are some of the milestones you can expect. And is it progressing life in a correct trajectory and stuff like that. But it's a framework that is provided to you by God, and it's entirely your prerogative what bhav you want to nurture and cultivate, without thinking, hey, maybe I should do that. I mean, it'll come naturally to you and you keep on working on that. We need to simplify our thought process, building a relationship with God. Yeah.
And there's one more question from Manisha ji. In Madhurya Bhav, is there any difference what Radha ji have or Rukmani ji have for Krishna? Like, do we have to see Radha ji's way of approach more closer than Rukmani ji? As while Vrindavan, she's just mentioning, as while Vrindavan trip, she felt difference between those two.
Right. So in Leela Jagat, actually, if you look at it, Rukmini, Lakshmini, all they are part of Radharani only. But in those avatars, the manifestation of love for Krishna varies. Okay. For example, in Rukmini, it is 50-50. It is form of a wife. 50% for your sake, 50% for my sake. Okay, like spouse relationship. And in Radha, it's completely selfless. Okay, so the proportions could vary as well based on the avatar and what is being manifested. So yes, the selflessness of Radha is unparalleled. Okay, that is completely, and Gopi Bhav basically, and the Gopis also, the highest level of Gopis, they would exercise that as well, complete selflessness. So yes, it can vary. In this particular context, Rukmini, it is said that it's Dwarka, all the queens of Dwarka, they were middle category of, they had 50% for their own sake and 50% for Lord Krishna's sake. Then they were the other category as well, where it was completely for Krishna's sake, their own sake. Okay, Sakam Bhakti, who used to do. And then there were some who had completely for the sake of Krishna, that love that they had. So they are the highest ones. So yes, Radha's is an unparalleled place. It's completely devoid of selfishness, not even a trace of selfishness. The highest epitome of devotion one can practice. And certain things are reserved for that seat only because a Jivatma cannot practice that. Yes.
There are more questions, but probably I'll first take the hands and then I can get back to the one. Tanmayji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Tanmayji.
Radhe Radhe. In this process, does when God descends, do they control our body? Like bodily movements?
Do they control our bodily movements, you're saying?
Yes, like in addition to controlling our mind, like whenever we are in this process, like asking questions, getting the answers. So like they move our body and they make us look at some signs, then we are figuring out in our mind. So in this process, I have sometimes felt that the God is controlling our body for a moment as well. And I do get answers.
Quite possible. See, there might be moments where God might pick you up as an instrument. It is quite possible.
So how do I confirm, Nitya? Otherwise, it might be just a mere illusion.
Is it an illusion or it is truly God? I don't know.
Yes,
you have to work with your guru to ask that question. These are very difficult. See, our brain has certain synapses. Once those synapses are joined, certain hallucinations can also give you a feeling that God is acting through me. Okay, so only a realized saint can resolve this puzzle for you. We cannot. See, when we repeatedly think about something, is it that synapses in our brain which is giving us that hallucination, or is it truly happening? Okay, that differentiation.
क्योंकि मैं continuously किसी topic पे सोचते रहता हूँ तो हो भी सकता है illusion भी हो क्योंकि ये कैसे dispel करेगा उन्हीं से पूछना पड़ेगा स्वामी जी से.
You need to work with the guru, realized saint on this one. So work with him on this and then see what answer you get around it. Because whether it's our synapses, mind ka locha, they say, right? And Munna Bhai MBBS, chemical locha is happening because of our repeated thinking, or there is truly some divine intervention happening. Only a realized person can tell. Okay, nobody else can. It's very difficult to yeah. Right? In that movie Munna Bhai MBBS, he used to see Gandhi in front of him, and then they said it was chemical locha, some kind of a thing, right? So schizophrenia and those kind of things, that becomes their reality. What reality? They actually see that. If you look at some of the schizophrenic people, they live in two worlds, and it's a reality for them. Now, is that reality caused because of something happening here, some synapses in your brains, or is it happening because of some divine intervention? We cannot understand that. Okay, only a realized person can tell you and guide you and coach you on that. Okay, yes, but good question, Tarunji. Glad you brought it up.
Monica G has asked, can you give example of a milestone in Madhurya Bhav?
Milestone in Madhurya Bhav. So it's a right question to a wrong person, Monica G. So it's something you need to work with your guru on, especially if there are certain things you are feeling and it is happening persistently, then it's something you should be asking guru and see the response around it. You need to work with a guru or realized saint on this, and they can guide you and see basically, if it leads from one milestone to another. Okay, and that's something that would be your conversation with your guru, because only a realized person can tell about that, right? Theoretically, at least I haven't come across it. I'm a theory person, right? So whatever is in theory, my job is to put it as it is in front of you. Practically, you have to figure out stuff and work with the guru, part of it. But yeah, good question. There will be milestones for sure. Yes.
There's a question from Tarunji. Is there any example where any bhakt changed bhav and moved from one to other?
It can happen. It can happen. There are a lot of scenarios, stories here in like Bhagavatam. You see, look at it. If people from Brahma, basically the worshipping God as light or Brahman or all-pervading energy, have actually changed to Dasya Bhav, right? We look at Uddhav's example. Then it could happen. People who would worship. I think there are some examples. I think Swamiji has been talking about, where some of the saints who have been practicing in Dasya Bhav, when they come in contact with the Rasik saint, that Bhav can start transforming as well, right? And I have seen so many people who go from worship of, now it may say, okay, you're changing Ishtadev here. When you worship Lord Shiv, you cannot do it in, some protocols and decorum has to be maintained, I guess, there as well. But they have changed to Rasik Bhakti as well. Those examples are there. I have seen so many such examples. It can happen. Premanand Swamiji, he's the example of that. He used to be a big Shiv Bhakt and he became to Radha Bhakti and Krishna Bhakti after that. So those kind of examples can happen. It can change, but then you need an intervention of a Rasik saint based on your past sanskar and a lot of other factors. I don't know what happens, but it can happen, certainly happen.
Samji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Nitin, you already mentioned that Rukmani had 50% kind of for herself and 50% for Lord Krishna. So Rukmani, Satyabhama. So what in the ladder, where will you put Sakha Bhav or Dasya Bhav? Or...
It is Madhurya Bhav only. But within Madhurya Bhav also, you remember we did a session, maybe I can do a session on that itself. Then you keep on changing, right? Adhirud Mahabhav. Then within that also you have three kind of ratis. Ratis means where you are doing loving Krishna for your sake only, like Kubja, which is called Sadharani Rati. Then you have Samanjasya Rati, 50-50, Rukmini and Dwarka kings. And then you have the Samartha Rati, where 100% Krishna.
So basically in Madhurya Bhav, there's some classifications are there, kind of. They will
like,
be
better kind of a deal. There are some classifications down there as well. Yeah.
And by that, I think, with the same logic, I think all the 16,000 so-called wives, they also fall into the same.
16,108, yeah.
Yeah, they will be falling into the same Madhurya Bhav subcategory, some kind of some.
Possibly, I don't know about each one of them personally. I haven't profiled anyone of them.
No, that's okay.
But I would imagine, yes, they would have loved God or have had some kind of a feeling toward God and one of his avatar kals in that sense, and that is why they got the privilege to become one of his wives.
That's okay. Thank you. Just want a broad idea of that one. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Ankurji.
And that is why he's called God, right? He could handle 16,108 wives. People struggle to manage one wife. So, yeah.
Radhe Radhe, Ankurji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. So, I don't have a question, just sharing a kind of an experience. So, this different bhav, what I notice it when we hear, when we watch, or when we participate in the story or doing the seva for the Krishna in different form, whether it's Laddu Gopal or the grown one, these bhavs evolves with the times. Like if you have a Krishna changing the dress, just simply talk to them what kind of dress you want to wear, or just going to temple, say Krishna, how are you? So these bhavs from the Dasya to Shakya can automatically evolve, and having a small Krishna, like I said, Laddu Gopals, you will evolve that Vatsalya bhav, giving them nap in the afternoon or in the night. So yeah, that's my experience.
People do that. Very nice. What you brought. They build that sentiment with their Laddu Gopal, or they will carry somebody. There was a guy I've heard about, from ISKCON. He used to reserve 2 seats. Even in aeroplane, he would reserve 2 seats, one for Krishna, one for himself. That level of sentiment they develop, that he is with me. He is traveling with me. He's always with me. So it's up to you to, that's why I said, right, it's a richness of the sentiment that you cultivate for God. And there is no limit to that, right? And in the bhavs, there's absolutely nothing. It's all mental exercise, nothing more. You don't even need physical means basically to get stuff for him, right? There are even your mansi bhakti, when you do, the most expensive, exquisitive hars you can get and put it on God's feet, right? If you're practicing that devotion, it's your bhav that matters, not the actual thing at that point, right? So it's a richness of sentiment. There's no limit. And Laddu Gopal, like you said, I've seen people worship it that way, and they even see the deity responding, based on the bhav that they have, that today I'm happy, today I'm not happy, today I need this, today what you prepared, you could have. So they actually start nurturing those sentiments as well. And it's like enlivening that whole thing. And that is the whole idea of devotion.
Yes, sometimes it looks like childish, but I think it works with the bhav. And yeah, you going out, say, Krishna, can you come with me? So
True.
those kind of experience.
There are so many stories, you can check it out, right? The Dhanna Jat and all, where just your bhav that, okay, I'm going to beat you up if you don't eat it. And God has actually come down and eaten the food. So it's a bhav, the purity of bhav that you bring in to your whole thing, right? They call about deity worship and all. God is present everywhere. All you need to cultivate is a bhav. That's all. He's going to manifest himself. And there are so many stories, Dhanna Jat stories there. As little boy, used to worship Krishna, and the priest had gone and God had to manifest and eat food because he was so bhula. He used to think that this prasad has to be eaten by God. Why is he not eating him? And I'm not going to eat if you don't eat it. And God had to manifest and eat it. So it's a purity of sentiment that you bring into your devotion that matters, not that particular deity. God is present everywhere. And so he's present in deity as well. It is just giving you a basis for devotion. That's all. Now, when you look at some form or bring some picture to mind, it just helps you build that relationship. And when you keep on decorating and enhancing it, then automatically that bhav is getting cultivated and you're doing that simulation, and God is going to give you results in due course of time. That's all it is. Not that we are limiting God to an object or a deity or a stone, nothing of that sort. It's just a basis to form that bhav. That's all. Even if you go to church and all, they say, right, in this particular place, we feel the presence of God. That is also deity worship, right? Because it's light, something they special they feel. Even people who are Marxist and all, they tie the photo of their leaders there. You say, throw a stone at it, they will say, no, what? There is a sentiment to that. That person is long gone. We put up pictures of our grandfather and all, and very nicely on are they there? They're not. It's a sentiment you're building. Similarly, God says you build that sentiment. That's all Bhav is. Right? So that's essentially the same principle here as well. Okay, I see a couple of more hands.
Varnaji is asking, can we have mixed bhav like Vatsalya plus Sakha plus Madhurya? Like
There'll be shades, of course. We are not settled. There'll be shades, right? There could be shades for sure. That's why I'm saying we don't need to overcomplicate this whole process. You settle down with the bhav that comes naturally to you. God will sort it out for you in due course of time, right? God and Guru will sort it out in due course of time for you, because all you need to bring in that I need to build that relationship with God, bring in that purity, bring in that deep desire, and keep practicing, leave to God and Guru the rest. Whatever comes naturally to you.
Seema is asking, is it confirmed and 100% certain that we would all be diverted towards Krishna, even if I am a loyal Mahadev devotee?
Not your questions usually bring a smile, okay? Not necessarily, Seema. You need to, it's not like if you have very deep devotional bhav for Mahadev, maybe that's your course, that is fair. But then Mahadev also is a devotee of Krishna, right? He directs people, his biggest devotees, he direct there as well, because that is the madhurya bhav or the more proximity bhavs you can practice. So it may or may not happen, but you don't have to think too much about it. You focus on what comes naturally to you and leave to God and Guru the rest. That's why I'm saying we don't need to overcomplicate a thought process around it. What is coming naturally to you is based on so many things, your past sanskars and the things that you've been doing. So why not just continue to focus on what you're doing? And if it has to happen, happen, not happen, doesn't matter. You're still attaching to God, not anybody less, right? I would keep it simple in my head.
Ashutosh ji is asking, if a person loves Krishna in Sakhya Bhav and only think of Krishna's pleasure, will it be higher than Kubja's love?
Okay, now we are getting into some technicalities here. So Nishkam Sakhya Bhav is better than, greater than Sakam Madhurya Bhav, is what you're asking about. I don't know, to be honest. Okay. What are the different permutation combination possible in Sakam, Nishkam across all the bhavs? But it might be a good question to ask to Swamiji, right? I don't know about that.
Okay.
But it is said that Sakam, what do you call, Sagun Sakar Bhakti is higher than Nishkam Nirgun Nirakar. I don't know if that is even possible or not. Something like that I had heard somewhere. Maybe I need to cross verify that. But yeah, these kind of questions, I think these are very technicalities we are getting into, so that only Swamiji can answer. I mean, I'm not even entitled to talk about that. So I've told you whatever I have understood, but there are combinations, permutations, stuff like that. You need to go to an expert for that.
Dhyasini, Radhe
Yes.
Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Dhyasini?
Yes, I have two things to say. First of all, my realization, which Tanmayji shared, I mean, I may be wrong. Please forgive me for that. Because, I felt that even if it's an illusion, I mean, we all think that it's our own chit chat. Even if it's an illusion that God is working through me or God is making my body move, it's a good thing, because until and unless we commit a sin, like it's like, for example, we are murdering someone and we are thinking that God is making me work. So it's not right like that. God would never want us to fight. But until and unless if it's for the good, like increasing our bhav or love or sentiment towards God, then even if it's an illusion, I think it's fine, because it will help us develop faith on God more and more. It will help us strengthen the root of our faith. So I think it is like that. And also, according to about, like, based on the Bhav topic today, I remember Maharajji's one bhajan, that is Jo Piya Ruchi Rakhe. That one, in that it is like Maharajji writes that Jo Madhurya Bhav Apnave Yamichari Bhav Samave. Like if like Madhurya Bhavs actually compiles all the bhavs. If one practices Madhurya Bhav, then everyone can like sometimes we say to our spouse or partners like, oh Shuna Babu, so it's like a Vatsalya Bhav only. So
Right,
it
we said all the bhavs
automatically comes.
Yes.
Yes. So that is the
That's a
thing
good point.
I wanted to share. Thank
Yeah,
you.
good point.
Radhe Radhe.
Anything? Thank you, Dhyasini. Yeah, good point. Anything, I mean, even if it's something it's happening in your mind, as long as you're not committing a sin and thinking God is acting through you, if it's helping you enrich your bhav, that's great actually. Anything that helps you enrich your bhav is good, basically, from that sense. Thank you, Dhyasini. And yes, Madhurya Bhav covers all the bhavs underneath it automatically. Classified. I think we are pretty much on time, on clock. So last one, classified. Classified G, please go ahead.
All right. Would God still love me if I beat nigger for being black? Or like if I scam some more grandmas out of their money, Or would he not like that very much,
Sorry, can you please repeat your question? Would God still like you if you are?
If I be nigger for being black?
It doesn't matter actually. See, did you start joining the sessions now, or have you been joining?
I've just started now,
So yeah, basically let's get back to the fundamentals here, right? The fundamentals is we are divine souls. This body, our exterior, doesn't matter, it's cross. So what we are discussing here is a science of soul and God. So our true identity is soul, and soul is not black, white, or brown, or any color, or pink, or for that matter, any color. Okay. So it's a science between soul and God is agnostic to the externals aspect of it, right? Which caste, creed, nationality, skin color we belong to, doesn't matter at all. So it's a universal science that we are talking about. So if from that standpoint, we are all divine souls. Okay, there's absolutely no difference between any one of us from that standpoint. So we'll get back to the fundamentals, but yeah, to answer your question shortly, God is agnostic to that fact. And that is why he's God, right? These are all created by humans, that if you are this, then this will happen, or if you only surrender to this, then this will happen. Nothing of that. God is, God, it's a science between soul and humans and God, basically. And humans are humans. Right? That's more universal. Hope I answered your question a little bit at least. But yeah, please fill in the feedback tracker if you have any more questions. This was a very fundamental question that you asked, and we can certainly discuss that more if you have any more questions around it. So please do put the feedback tracker. I hope it has already been posted. And if you have any further questions related to this topic or otherwise. Great.
Yeah, the feedback tracker couple of times so everybody can fill it. Yeah.
Yes. Any more questions, or we are good for today?
I don't see any more questions in the chat or otherwise.
Great. We can wrap it up on time today. I know Sundays we wanted to, Tawani ji has said, unless somebody wanted to do a quick chanting today, Monica ji, Seema, or anybody today, or not today, that's fine. We can wrap it up on time today in that case. All right. We can prepare for tomorrow. So thank you again for a very engaging session and patiently hearing me out. And please do fill in the feedback tracker, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend and rest of your day. Radhe Radhe from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Radhe Radhe.